separate them, like father in sugar fields, children in iron mines, mother in cotton fields, but only the Europeans can have to the final destination. Some of them during the crossing, just to avoid the suffering, they just jump off on the ocean for the self-destruction. Some of them can vomit inside the ship because of seasickness, they throw them on the ocean. Or they can vomit also, they throw them, but also the ship can sink with 500 or 600 enslaved, all of them will sink directly. Between Africa and final destination, it's reason of like 25 to 50% can die, or 100% in the ship sunk. And this cell was not cement before, and they will stay here with a natural needed because they was free one time only to go to the bathroom. Before that or after that, if they have a diarrhea, they want to vomit or urinate, they was obligated to do that here, and when the night comes, they sleep on it, and we become the sludge, and they sleep on it with high sex on it. And the destination was Europe before discovering America, because the slave trade was begun by the Portuguese since 1441, and they say America was discovered in 1492, or is a lie. America was discovered by the African we call Massa Musa. It was the first African who arrived in America before Columbus. Massa Musa was was arrived in Africa in 1230. It was before 200 years before Columbus. And this the door was closed with iron bar, and iron bar as like a gel, and windows also. And the only windows from outside is that one.
À l'époque, les hommes et les femmes qui avaient quitté le continent n'ont jamais été partagés sur le voyage. Ils étaient obligés de quitter le continent par force.
But here was a cell for the kids. Sometimes it was found like 120 family, like a 20 different family here. But we can have like 2 children, 4, 5 or 6 in one family. But for the kids, they just check the teeth of them like horses. If they have enough teeth, they see they can eat enough. If they don't have enough teeth, they leave them with a mouse for the breastfeeding. They used to take their children on the different fields because they can transport luggage. They can do the small works like a domestic. Other mines, because of smaller sizes, they can get inside the mines easily. And some of them, they put them on the cage as a domestic animal, and the person who's fabric the belt, they choose and the bags with alligator leather. Just to able to get attacked by the alligators, they use the black babies as a bait. And they exchange the children against a mirror, necklaces, small bottle of alcohol, earrings, and small different things. They used to exchange the children. Even the person who was fabric like a different person on the medicine, they used to kill them just to test the different things they fabric. It's like a kind of guinea pig for them. And this cell was for 30 or 35 or sometimes 40 children. It was all naked here. Even the adult was naked, the kids will stay here, they was all naked. 35 or 40 children here.
Okay.
The both cell.
Yeah, it is a cell for children. So that, it's new. Before that, they put it for the
1770.
yeah, around children.
It looks like a narrow gallery, which is
And you have to sell for the young girls, the merchants, and the military was not allowed to come to Africa with a wife. And they would choose between the young girls who was beautiful, virgin, or clean. They used to make the girl. And with time, she can be pregnant, she can have a daughter or son. They call them mulatto, like a male between donkey and horse. But the children between the African girls and other men, the children have the same stature like a mom. If the mom was free, the children become free. If the mom was slave, the children become enslaved, like a mom. But the merchant also was allowed to get married with African girls, but the majority was mulatto. They call this kind of marriage a stand-off country. Just for a few months or a few years, it was just in Africa during the stay of a merchant. And when the merchant go back in Europe or America, if they don't have enough money to come back in Africa again, if they don't have another mission in Africa, he can write a letter and send to his wife and explain the reason of why he cannot come back, or he will be back, but it took a long time before come back. And the wife was allowed to have another husband. She can keep the family of first husband, she can take the family of second husband. She can have 2 3 or 4 different husbands. With the time, they cannot call them husband family because they have a lot. They just call them senhor, and senhor is the formation of Portuguese word senhora. The different houses on Goree or Saint-Louis of Senegal was living by the senhor or descendants of those senhor.
Okay.
And this house, the owner was a senhor we called Ampepa.
Okay.
But the young girls and the men more than 60 kilo was expensive. The children and women was 4 times cheaper. But the values of enslaved was just depend to the destination or the person who was supposed to buy them. As an example, when they were supposed to work on fields, different fields, it was exchanged against the sugar cane, cottons, tobaccos, rice, coffees, or corns. And when they were supposed to work on the mines, it was exchanged against gold, silver, iron, gunpowder, or there was exchanged 25% against 1 horse or 30% against 1 horse. For them, one animal was expensive and more value than 2 human beings. And this house was for 25 girls.
So, the cell was reserved for the young girls. I'm not saying
And here was for the punishment. Feeding room. It was for the feeding room, and they used to come in Africa. Before coming in Africa, they put enough quantity of food and the fresh water for the cruise ship and the number of enslaved they were supposed to catch. Sometimes they choose between them who are allowed to eat and who are not allowed to eat because they bring enough quantity for the cruise ship and the number of enslaved they were supposed to catch. If they don't have enough food for everyone, they just used to throw some women and children on the ocean just to save the food for the young girls and the men more than 60 kilo because on the final destination they used to do auction sale for them. And this sale was for the men less than 60 kilo, like a feeding bowl with the beans, palm oil, and corns to make them fat and strong. And here was for the punishment. And they used to say, nobody can tell you exactly how many people can get inside. In reality, they doesn't care about the number. It can be 5, 10 or 15 persons. The only problem was how to close the door behind them. And the first person who get inside the cell have difficulty to have the fresh air. Because the cell becomes smaller, they follow the stairs. They can stay here 1 day, 2 days or 3 days or sometimes 1 week. When they're getting out, they have a difficulty to stand up. And some of them can die inside because it was difficult for them to breathe inside.
Yes.
And Nelson Mandela, during his official visit in 1991, after 27 years jail, was kept inside this cell. But a few minutes later, they found him with the tears. Well, just imagine it, how he was castrated to stay inside a cell like this and with a not tormented a human being and during 8 days. And when they passed away, they just found him on the ocean.
Et pour ceux qui se rebellent, voilà les petits cellules d'isolement.
And here was like the first one. I used to say it's the same but different because that one have 2 small windows at both sides. But those windows were just in 1848. And 1848 was the second abolition of slave trade by the French. Because the slave trade was abolished by the French for the first time in 1794, just 5 years after the French Revolution. But Napoleon's wife, Josephine, and she was mulatto, like her mother was black and father white. But she asked Napoleon to stop the slave trade again because when the slave trade was abolished, she will be obliged to pay the people for her to work on the different sugar fields. Just to avoid that, she asked Napoleon to stop the slave trade in 1802. When they tried to stop the slave trade, there was done revolution in Haiti, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. And behind that revolution, Haiti took its independence and became the first black republic free. And the British was abolished slave trade in 1807, but slavery in 1833. In America was in 1863, confirmed in 1865. But Cuba and Brasilia was the two last countries who abolished slave trade in 1888. Began by the Portuguese 1441 to 1888, the slave trade was during 447 years. But UNESCO use estimates the victims of slave trade in diverse countries in Africa, more than 112 million victims. And also, many of them. You may explain, you know, you go back to this. Kifi ki ben la. Bul defati li. Non, bul defati non. Ki bo fi dara ko xol ci non, non.